Everyone, welcome back to the Tsunami is Coming, the What Keeps Me Up at Night edition. Today, I am very fortunate to be joined again by a colleague at HEC Paris, a former HEC Paris master student, and more, and now a colleague with whom I find myself on various exciting programs, especially related to AI. Julian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
All right. Well, to you and to everyone else, I ask you, what keeps you up at night, Julian?
So, I have to give a little bit of a background. Half German, half French, have a Spanish wife. So I might have a little bit of a European perspective, knowing that there are not only Europeans out there. What keeps me up at night is if you are spending time in the US or somewhere else, everybody's saying, "Look, Julian, I'm so sorry you come from Europe. How on earth do you want to survive that next disruption where AI is coming? It's a big transformation challenge. And Europe is really good at not feeling any urgency. We have a big task of transforming. I mean, you see it in many ways. In Germany, you have the work councils that block everything what is related to AI. If you talk with people in France about, hey, we need to transform, they say, yeah, but I want to go to retirement now a year earlier. So it's a real challenge of how do you transform these organizations? And so what keeps me up at night is how can we make sure that we have those great companies that we have today in Europe, and how can they actually transform? And the funny thing is, we've been in this situation many times, right? You had the electricity, the internet, we had waves over waves of disruption. And we as a society, we are fantastic and very consistent in not learning anything from it. So
Hmm.
every time we believe this is the new disruption now. I think what is different this time is that we have AI to survive the AI disruption. So while AI is a disruption itself, what keeps me up at night is how can we use AI to survive the disruption and make that this time companies have a little bit more success rates than 70% failing at transforming.
This is a fascinating response, Julian. But let me ask you this. So you started to answer this question, but I'd love to dive deeper into this. You're talking about something that can feel like a Frankenstein sometimes, which is European bureaucracy, right? At the European level, you spoke about the German level, the more local level, and so on. You are an entrepreneur. Maybe you'll tell us about what you're currently doing. How do you see your role facing that bureaucratic Frankenstein, so to speak?
So the problem is when you talk with the bureaucracy, we are not a federated European Union, right? So every country is mainly fighting for themselves. And if you talk to the politicians, so last time I was on a panel with the German Minister of Digitalization and asked him, hey, how does it look? I mean, I'm half French, half German. I see on both sides that we have those big problems. How do we facilitate collaboration? And the answer from those politicians is, that's not my job. That's the company's job. So I think obviously that's not the answer I'd like to hear. But what I really focus on is how can you take rather the big tankers like a Sanofi, an AXA, and Henkel? How do you take those big, large corporations in Europe and enable them to make the transformation happen and embark their people in that transformation?
And can you speak to how successful you've been, the do's and don'ts, the stories of happiness and maybe the stories of frustration?
Yes, happy to. So, what is very nice is the approach that we've taken has been awarded by the World Economic Forum for recognition of how we use AI to embark people in the transformation processes. Because perhaps one thing that you need to be aware of, if you want to be successful at transformation, McKinsey published a beautiful article which says we need to embark 30% of our employees in the transformation, meaning 30% of our employees need to have a concrete deliverable that contributes to transformation if we want to be successful. The average is at 2%.
Mm.
So the difference is quite a lot. And if you have less than 7% of people that are participating, you're actually burning capital.
Wow.
Most companies who do transformation are burning capital and they do it for the shiny use cases and so on and so forth. So the real question is, how do you mobilize the people to be part of the organization? And you basically face three main challenges. The first one is, I don't want to participate. right? Nobody says likes change. Everybody's afraid of AI. We're going to lose our jobs. It's going to be bad. It's going to be change. Even if I don't lose my job, it's going to mean that I have to do stuff differently. We don't like that. So how do you solve that challenge? That's the first one. The second one, let's assume we get people really enthusiastic about it. Second question is, once I'm enthusiastic, so what should I do now? People are really good at what they do, but they have no expertise in transformation and they have no expertise in AI itself. So that's the second challenge. And the third
Hmm.
challenge is once you have people motivated, then able to act, how do you coordinate that? Because with AI being so much democratized, the huge issue that it runs in all sorts of directions. And then the biggest challenge is the governance challenge. Are you asking me, have we made it already? I think we're still on the quest. I think we're making quite some good progress with a couple of clients that we're working with. The biggest client we're working with is Sanofi. So Sanofi working with 3,000 leaders in the organization by now, will now go into verticals of working in the different areas. And what do? Is we go to the boss and say, what is it that you want to do? Then we go to the employees, give them agentified workshops where they have to work, they have to translate that vision into their area, find problems. Then we go to the middle management and say, dear middle management, you guys are not doing anything right now. That's mostly the case in organizations. And so what happens is that we say, look, you have been benchmarked and assessed on the AI maturity. And sorry, it was benchmarked against all the others, and the data comes from your employees, so you better listen. Second, here you have an agent that helps you take now transformational action, so there's no excuse not to act. And then we go back to the leadership and say, dear leadership, your people translate your vision in that way, and that's what your middle management is now trying to do to activate. Is that first of all aligned with you? Answer is partially. Only about 15 to 30% of what people propose is aligned with what the people on top want to do. So that's the first one. Second, what are the investments that you need to take in order to push it forward, right? And then obviously, also there's a lot of organizational restructuring that you need to do in order to move in that direction.
Mm. It's fascinating at so many levels, including two. The first one, this feels like a very organizational approach that happens in spite of bureaucracy. That's what I'm hearing in what you're saying. Meaning the way to overcome is to try to function inside that constraint. Is that a correct reading?
So you're partially right.
Yeah.
The governance issue is one of the biggest issues. So if you look
Yeah.
into BCG, how
Mm.
many agents do you think does a BCG have globally?
That's a good question. How many eight you're
So I'll give
putting
you
me
an
on
idea.
this.
It's 33,000
Wow.
agents.
All right, I wouldn't have been close. Okay.
How many agents does a company like a Sanofi has?
I
Give me
would
a
have
guess,
guessed
you will be wrong.
as much. Yeah, as many.
So they have 11.
Okay.
Sanofi globally has 11 agents. Where does it come
Wow.
from? If you think as an organization, a company like Sanofi, pharma company, is making about 55 billion in revenue, I think, something like that. They have grown, first of all, through merger and acquisitions, and they always had money. And so everybody, as AI came, was very impatient and they run into all these different directions. And now the problem is that you have a lot of very sophisticated islands that are not linked to each other. And so now they need to go through the organization and destroy everything to reunite because otherwise you cannot scale AI and it will be usually will cost a lot. So companies are really afraid that people start building up their own agents and that every agent is basically redefining how your process runs. And so the problem is if you have now a lot of agents, you basically multiply your silos. So you do need to have governance, but you need to balance it with enabling people to do things. So I think the answer to it, because this is one of the core things that I'm working on right now, is we need to, what perhaps one step back, what is an agent? An agent is basically a prompt, and everybody thinks about one line prompt. You can make it 3, 4, 5 pages prompt, right? So you give it a lot of knowledge. Then you give some data to it. Say, okay, this is the data you want to set. Either you have it like you upload it, or you have some links to data. Then you have your APIs, your connectors to different systems. And then you have a governance of saying which one in the organization should have access to it. The problem is that there's a lot of business people who don't really know, and they're gonna throw stuff at the technical guys and say, we want this. And then they are really afraid because they're overwhelmed. The business cases don't make sense. The prompts are not retested and improved. So this is really a messy situation. So how companies currently do it, a lot of them is they block. They say, okay, guys, we're going to be very careful which agents we do. What we're trying to do right now is change the paradigm. Say, we take people, we educate them, and we let them come up with very easy to implement agents. That's super easy prompts with just data that you can upload yourself. And then we let them test the stuff before it goes to the governance. And I think this is where we need to go as organizations, then also in society.
And this is what you are currently doing with your own entrepreneurial venture.
That's one of the things. Yeah. So
One of
basically,
the, yeah, go
so
ahead.
what is the vision that we call it agentic nervous system?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds a bit crazy, but basically what we say is agents have a huge power to engage individuals and to enable them to understand things. So take a little bit of our job away, dear Jeremy, of teaching people in the moment, and in the moment enabling them to have certain reflections. And regardless of the topics, this is super powerful. Now, if you have these agentic workshops that people have, and there's outputs created, and you can do behavior change with that, if you have multiple of these types of workshops with different people that are customized to this task, and you connect those things, you can create a nervous system in the organization that moves the needle way faster. And there we're going back to the three challenges we had at the beginning. You take the people, you really embark them, you put them in the center of the transformation. You enable them by having agents that help them taking actions. And third, as everybody's working with your agents, you get transparency what people think and you can coordinate better. And that's what we believe is what we see now in many fields. This exists in sales, it exists in other areas. And what we're doing is currently focusing on transformation and see if we can save our poor big European companies to at least remain as great as they are. That would be already fantastic.
Could you speak to what it means to you in this context to be an entrepreneur? It's very striking in what you're describing. You know, there are the big guys. There's you, at a far smaller scale. We have this image, of this superhero-like entrepreneur ready to disrupt the world and so on. You seem to be giving an image that's far more concrete, than our collective imagination. What have the past weeks, past months taught you in the looking at this AI wave and the opportunities and the risks you see?
That's a good one. So I think the opportunities are, when it comes to AI, very concrete. Why?
Mm,
Because at the end, what we do ourselves as a company, we build agents. And again, agents is nothing magic. It's a prompt and it's some databases. That's it.
yeah.
And some connectors. That's how simple it is. The real question comes from what do you write in the prompt and which data do you have access to? And if you build in a way that your products are creating the data for your next products, obviously the data is solved. And then it comes a question to why are you not easy to copy is because of your domain expertise. And it always
Mm,
comes down to domain expertise. If you would create something like that, Jeremy, I'm very sure we could sit together and you would create an agentic workshop that would go through some political questions and we would feed information to the right people in a way more efficient time. And we could do some political moves in matters of hours instead of lasting for 3 months. And I'm sure that you talk a lot about how faster we need to be in doing things. So the technology is super easy. The question is, do you integrate your domain expertise into making it happen in a meaningful way?
yeah. Just one final question to take a step back, and to play, the role I love to play, which is devil's advocate here, about the European Union, since this is where we started, let's go back and here. I'm very struck by one thing. The Silicon Valley, lack of a better word, basically seems to have completely transformed and aligned with Donald Trump because they think they have his ear and thus can influence him accordingly, right? This is a far cry from what we witnessed the previous decade when they looked for some distance. I was struck by the whole anthropic issue, where you saw basically how quickly fates can turn and how success can be incredibly short lived, right? So, devil's advocate, yes, Europe is boring. Yes, there's a big Frankenstein-like bureaucracy, but then again, there's a form of visibility here. Do you see any truth to this? And maybe, giving the Europeans a roadmap to be better hosts for this AI revolution, or is this really wishful thinking?
I mean, you could argue if you think what happened with GDPR, for example, right? The whole
Mm,
world saying GDPR, the Europeans, are you completely crazy? I mean, who wants that? But at the end, what it helped us to do, it created certain boundaries to secure our market. Because if you're not GDPR client, you're not working with us. And we set a certain standard also outside of the world. So will this work on the European AI Act? I'm not so sure. And we see that
mm.
there's quite some changes of going back to the drawing board and rethinking how we should be doing this. The problem for me is not even bureaucracy, actually. For me, the problem is really a society problem. People believe that we are in a good time and this will not change. I think people don't acknowledge that we are moving into a direction economically that is quite dangerous. Think about the German car industry, right? This is, I don't know if this will somehow survive. Think about, I mean, we're losing some, first of all, we're losing a huge percentage of our workforce. All this knowledge is currently not saved, right? So we're losing, this is fading away. We are not in a situation where economically we can say, I look very positively on Europe. And if we don't make this urgency established, and I don't see that, people are too living a good life, that they really want to engage in such a big transformation to make AI transformation happen.
Fascinating perspective. Scary in some places, but absolutely fascinating. Julian, it's always a pleasure to catch up and have those thought-provoking conversations. I hope you come again.
Happy to.
All right. Thank you, Julian. And
Mhm.
see you all very soon for the next issue of the Tsunami's Coming.